Welcome to episode 033 of the Bit Beacon broadcast. It's May 6th, 2024. Kodax is here, that's me.
Ravenheart, that's me.
And what have you been playing? What have you been buying?
So for I haven't been playing much, but I did pick up Indivisible, which we'll talk about more.
Sure.
River City Girls, and I put in my order for the Chained Echoes game that we talked about
last week, right?
Last week, yeah.
Yeah, it was it won the German Game Award in 2023.
Matthias Linda is the solo developer behind that game.
Right.
Yeah. I can't wait to play it.
So the company that is doing the physical release of Chained Echoes, I think they're called First Press Games or something like that.
That sounds right.
I looked into them. They're sort of like a limited run style publisher based out of Europe, Germany specifically.
Signature edition and all those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was reading that First Press run has, I guess, been having like a lot of difficulty getting shipments out to people and things like that. Not that they're not trustworthy, but they're just like really bad about communication and just like super delayed. So it'll get to you when it gets to you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's fine. But I mean, if you want the game, you got to go through the publisher.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I looked at it, and I guess it said there's like 2,400 copies or something like that they're making.
Gotcha. That sounds like.
Yeah.
Like limited run used to be.
Right. Yeah. How it was super limited, but they grew past that, and they can just print as long as many as people order.
Right.
So yeah, I'm curious. It did look like a really nice package, though.
Oh yeah,
it came with like a couple little goodies. Yeah.
It had like, I can't remember what it had in it, but it looked like a soundtrack and like
like a coin, like a print, like a metal coin that has like a custom, molding to it.
Yeah, it had a jacket, I believe.
Yeah,
and I thought I saw like a little art book pamphlet looking thing. I don't know what it is, but. We'll see when I get it.
Yeah. You'll have to bring it in. We can do an unboxing right here. Okay, so since you kind of brought up two of the games that kind of tie into this event, why don't we just jump straight into talking about what we've been up to. I mean, I guess I should mention before we go there, I have been continuing to play Ys Memories of Celceta.
Yeah. I
am in the final dungeon of the game.
Cool.
It's broken up into like 3 or 4 different like mini dungeons within the dungeon. And I've got like one more segment and then I think the final segment to do. And I've done pretty much everything I'm going to do in this playthrough of the game in terms of like the overworld and all the quests and everything.
Right.
It is a game where like I did really need to have a guide with me. I think I mentioned that previously.
Yeah, you said that there was a lot of missables and
exactly.
You have to know stuff.
Yeah, like it's just impossible.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you didn't know to go back between this segment and that segment of the story to talk to this one NPC to trigger this one quest?
Right.
Well, too bad.
You didn't know that you're not going to come back to this room ever again.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a lot of stuff like that in it. But like I said, it's been fun to play with a guide. I enjoy that quite a bit. And anyways, it's been just a really enjoyable experience. I think this will probably be the last time I talk about it.
Okay.
I don't think anything significant is going to happen in this last part of the dungeon.
Well, I mean, a game should have an ending.
Oh yeah, there will be a final boss, I'm sure. That'll be like crazy. Apparently there's a boss in the overworld that's not technically like a boss. It's just like a super boss, I guess you could call it, but it doesn't have like the giant boss health bar,
Right, okay.
But it took me like 20 minutes and like 50 plus potions, which I rarely ever have to use a potion normally while playing the game.
Yeah.
To beat this boss and to beat this enemy. So I think if I can do that, I can probably do the final boss, which I understand is easier than whatever that was.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, I'm not I mean, it'll probably be, this super boss in the world was just like this like, crazy zebra looking horse unicorn
So
thing.
is it like just a normal enemy, not technically a boss with the boss UI elements?
Yeah, it doesn't have the boss UI elements, but it behaves like a boss with
Mm-hmm.
like its move set and things like that. And
Gotcha.
the damage that it deals is very boss-like behavior.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I had no idea when I first wandered into this certain part of the woods. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting looking thing. And then all of a sudden there's like lightning bolts all over the screen and dying and trying to run away.
Is it one of those things where it can show up randomly in any?
No, it's just a specific dedicated area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
there is like a trophy for beating it.
Okay.
And there's like, it's kind of guarding a chest, but you can technically kind of, if you're really quick and run around it and open the chest in between like the boss's movements, you can get to the chest and then like flee the area. So you don't technically have to beat it for anything but the trophy. And I guess what do you call it? The bestiary? The bestiary?
Bestiary.
The bestiary?
Yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah, so, it does count as like you don't unlock that entry until you've bested it.
Right, of course.
Into the bestiary.
As it should be.
Yes. Anyways, we both went to an event this weekend at Gallery Nucleus in Alhambra, California.
The Clock Tower, what is it, Rewind?
Clock Tower Rewind. Well, it's kind of an interesting. Clock Tower Rewind was sort of like a side thing to this person's like art exhibit.
Right.
So the exhibit at Gallery Nucleus was called Distress, and it was featuring the art of Mariel Cartwright,
Yep.
who has worked on games like Skullgirls, Indivisible. She's done work for Way Forward on like various Shantae games over the years.
And other projects.
Oh yeah, she went over like her she's been involved in a lot of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, which some of it was news to me.
Right.
I didn't know that she was like working on things for like even some of the Sonic kind of, not games, but like YouTube stuff.
Like Tales Tube on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, because her husband is Tyson Hess. For people that don't know, he was responsible for the redesign of the movie version of Sonic the Hedgehog. After they initially showed off the first design for the movie Sonic the Hedgehog, the public reaction was like, what on earth are you guys doing? And so Tyson, who was involved I think with the Sonic comics and some of the Sonic games, was brought in to redo the design for Sonic. And now he's heavily involved with the franchise, even more so than he was previously. He served as like a producer on Sonic 2 as well as the upcoming Sonic 3.
Another Sonic property that she did work on and showed, it was KO in Space, or Chao in Space.
I think that was another YouTube project.
I think it's because YouTube has like YouTube Kids. I think it's for that. I think.
Okay. Gotcha. So Mariel's artwork is, she described it herself as, I'm not very good at drawing clothes.
Yeah. So most of my people are naked.
Most of her characters that she were drawing were naked or nearly naked. And she's like, I like cute girls and dark things. So
she had a panel. The event opened up with a panel where she spoke about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And she went through her inspirations, getting started with drawing, her sort of dichotomy between drawing on paper versus drawing on digital touchscreen, which is what she's most used to. But drawing on paper is something she got more into for
this exhibit.
Yeah.
And she says it like unlocked something in her again, and she was able to like.
And I can kind of relate to that. I know what she's talking about.
Yeah, she mentioned that she did all these drawings when her and her husband were in London. When I guess he was working on the third Sonic movie.
You're right.
That I believe has like wrapped.
Right.
Now it's just all post-production stuff.
Right.
So after she finished that, she kind of did like a second little panel all about her work on the upcoming Clock Tower Rewind game.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you that don't know, we kind of mentioned this last week, it's sort of this like classic point and click style adventure game, survival horror game for the Super Famicom.
Yes. It went on to become a franchise.
Yeah.
And the later game, Clock Tower 2 and 3, don't play anything like Clock Tower 1.
Right.
Those are actually run around survival horror, hide and seek type mechanics. This is like dialogue box based, kind of.
I think there's hide and seek stuff too in
yeah.
this game.
You're
Yeah.
probably right.
But yeah, it's like you're like clicking on the closet, you know,
yeah.
to like get the character to go in there and stuff.
Yeah, it's point and click versus.
Yeah, there's a cursor on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this Clock Tower Rewind, as we mentioned last week, so we'll be brief. It's sort of a not a remaster, not a remake.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the original game with some optional extras, including a second version of the game that has like not cut content, but restored content from the PS1 version of the game, as well as they've officially incorporated like fan edits to the game.
Yeah.
To like maybe make it more usable.
Well, fan patches.
Yeah, fan patches.
And translations and stuff like that. There was.
They said there's a brand new translation for this game.
Yeah, they did go with like a brand new translation and voice acting.
Yeah.
But there was a PS1 port of Clock Tower that had additional content. Somebody made a patch that brought that additional content over to the Famicom version.
Right. Backported it effectively.
Right. And so they contacted the person who made that patch and asked if they could use the patch in this release, that's just cool stuff.
So now the patch is official.
Yeah, that's
because it's an official Clock Tower product now.
Right. That's just cool stuff. Port Plus is the actual like branding terminology.
That's the term they use. Yeah.
So that's what they went with to describe what they're doing.
Yeah, they said their previous Port Plus game was River City Girls Zero, which was another Super Famicom game that was originally only in Japan that they did a Port Plus of and brought it over here to the West for the first time.
Right.
So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
They also announced that they were incorporating like. There was a manga, I guess, back in the 90s that was tied into the Clock Tower, and it kind of made certain moments from the game like kind of like more, so you could visualize them maybe better, you know, via the manga.
Right.
And so they've now incorporated that manga into the game itself, and they're adding like a motion kind of aspect of it. So I imagine they had to like kind of cut and
what I envision is like
at
the end of the Danganronpa trials, you know how there's that like piece together of the whole case.
Yeah.
I envision something like that.
So am I.
Like
I think the game will kind of like cut to like these segments.
Like different frames of like this comic type thing.
Yeah.
And with like moving elements within and stuff.
Right.
One other thing that they did talk about is hold on. Oh man, I had a thought.
So the reason why Mariel's talking about all of this is because she's basically this game's like director, or this port's director.
Right.
Like she's the one responsible for kind of tying all this together.
Right.
And the big reason is because like there's not a lot of game to develop per se.
Right.
But there's a lot of art and extra kind of stuff like that they're incorporating into this port.
Right.
And that happens to be like her forte, animation and things like that.
Yeah.
So there is a new like minute and a half long animated intro that the game is getting via this Port Plus, and also another animated scene that'll take place at the end. They unfortunately didn't share this animation with us.
They showed us screenshots.
A couple screens, yeah.
And it is her animation for the most part.
Yeah, she said she did like, at least for the intro, the way she talked about it, she did like 99% of the work. You know, had some help with some backgrounds, things like that, but.
So I remember what I was going to say. One thing that she did talk about was a concern, I guess, that they had while doing this Port Plus is that some people are going to want to experience a more original, more traditional version of Clock Tower, and while others are going to be looking for these updates.
Sure.
You know, with the new anime intro and stuff like that. And she's trying to like balance that by having these comic type things alongside the newer animation.
Because the comics are like an authentic Clock Tower thing from at the same time that the game was like around in Japan. So I think that's a really cool way to sort of like do something to the game while still like maintaining like, okay, this very authentic thing that's not really new, you know?
Right.
So like maybe there's a lot of people who played Clock Tower that don't know about the manga, or they've never had a chance to read it. So now they got that, and the manga will be like motion eyes, so that means they will have to do some editing to it, you know. They're not just gonna like show you scans of the page. So that would imply to me that they would have to like kind of cut things out of the manga and sort of make like a 3D sort of effect. And that means they would have to like paint in things that weren't necessarily there in the original manga. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if a character is moving, now they got to paint like something that didn't exist behind where that character was in the manga. So yeah, I imagine that was quite a bit of work for them to do that and still have it maintain that authentic feel. But yeah, I think it sounds like it's really important to Way Forward because they know like classic purist gamers, they want like the authentic experience.
Yeah, they're definitely one studio that understands that.
Yeah, because there's probably people in that studio that want that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's people who don't like both, and there's some people who want like, oh, give me the version that has some like modern updates that I can, you know, make it easier for me to play the game.
Right.
Yeah.
I respect the modern updates because I do think that this should be a, you know, it is a separate installment, like it's a separate, you know, it should have its own identity to some degree.
Yeah.
If you want to play the original Clock Tower, play it on an emulator. Or use a fan translation, or God forbid, go get the original hardware and play it.
And then there's going to be like a cool gallery, an interview section where they have like video interviews with like the original creator of Clock Tower. Like they actually got him to like record like a new interview. You know, not something that was previously seen.
Right. Yeah, so there's behind the scenes content in the game, including an interview with the original creator of Clock Tower.
They said gave his blessing for this whole project.
Right. His name is in the credits, I think. Like
they said it. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, no, I don't remember his name. But I do think that I don't know if he was involved with doing any work on this or not.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like, you know, they talked to him, they approached him, they got his blessing. He did the interview, which I guess... Yeah. You know, it's going to be like an exclusive interview to this like game package that'll be like you can play it from within like your disc or your cartridge effectively.
Right.
But I'm sure it'll end up, you know, on YouTube eventually.
Oh yeah, it'll get ripped. But yeah, I mean that's still really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's not, you know, the further these games go back in time, the older these creators are, and it's like it's a good thing to get that blessing before it's too late, you know.
And that information that we can glean from the interview.
Exactly, yeah. Because they have probably all kinds of knowledge that they've, you know, never imparted before, you know, publicly.
Right.
So it's good for a historical standpoint, too.
Absolutely. So, should I move on?
Well, after the panel, we moved into the signing portion of the event.
That's right.
And so this is where Rick and I both had a copy of Indivisible, which was a game that Mariel was like creative director on.
Yeah.
And this was like a big game. It had a huge Indiegogo campaign years ago. Like we're going back to like 2016 or something like that, 2015 maybe.
Yeah.
And I believe it finally came out during like 2020, like mid-pandemic when it was in full swing. So it was cool to get her signature on my copy of that. And then maybe an interesting thing that happened to us is we were sitting right next to us. Someone sat down, and it was Adam Tierney, who is like way up there and way forward. He was advertised as being at the event and on the panel, even though he really wasn't. Mariel just kind of led the whole thing. But that's why Rick brought his copy of River City Girls. Yeah. Because Adam was creative director on that title.
So at the end of the day, I got Adam from Way Forward to sign it. Rem, the character artist and designer.
I haven't got to that yet.
Yeah, but I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So, I got her to sign it, and then I got this Jeremy guy from Way Forward, who's the QA manager, to also sign it. So I got 3 signatures on that game.
So when Rick gave his game to Adam, who was sitting right next to us, he's like, oh, hey, the character designer for River City Girls, she's going to be here later. She's like, yeah, she had this event elsewhere nearby, but she's going to come because I guess she must be friends with Mariel, or maybe Adam just invited her to come to it. But she's from Texas, so it's rare to have her in California.
Yeah.
And she was at the River City Girls that happened in December last year, which you unfortunately weren't able to make.
Right.
But you kind of made good on that.
Yeah.
Because you got your game signed anyways.
Right.
And so she also did a handful of like quick sketches for some people who were there. Mm-hmm. So that was cool to see her do her art live in person. Yeah, that was pretty much the event. I did pick up the Clock Tower print that they had for sale. And I did get Mariel to sign that during the signing too. And yeah, I thought it was a nice, quick, easy event.
Yeah.
Glean some cool information from it too.
Yeah, it was awesome. Moving into the Seraphim Weekly update, I don't really have a whole lot to share. I did get done with the graphical elements that I was doing for the pause menu.
Okay.
I haven't really implemented them all the way back into the game.
Okay.
I've just been working in Photoshop on that stuff.
Okay.
After I implement them, no doubt there's going to be a bunch of tweaks that need to be made. Probably stuff having to do with size and, alignment and stuff like that.
So, you bring them all in and you don't know how they're going to look in-game yet.
Well, I create a canvas in Photoshop that's the size of the screen.
Okay.
But it always, theoretically and mathematically, it should just translate perfectly.
But
never does. Never does. Especially after stuff starts moving and rotating and stuff. You just never know.
Yeah, I was going to say with the shaders and lighting and filters and things.
That's another thing. The lights and darks always end up getting tweaked because Seraphim has a lot of transparency in its shaders. Mm-hmm. Be it additive or multiplicative, which is, lightening or darkening.
Okay.
And after you do that, whatever base color you made your element or your asset is going to affect how dark or light it gets and how it translates on whatever's behind it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's completely invisible and I'm like, wow, I thought this was going to be light enough. Turns out I need to really crank it up.
Okay.
That kind of tweaking. Always happens.
Do you have to then take the asset back into Photoshop or is it something you edit in Unity?
No, I have to edit that in Photoshop.
Okay.
At that point, though, I can just save over the file. And then
it'll just update automatically. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at least there's that.
Yeah. It's not like I have to make a new file and then import it again or anything like that. Once it's in place, it's in place. But sometimes, if it's way off, position-wise or whatever, and I'm like, hey, I can't even scoot it enough on the canvas. Or if I do scoot it on the canvas, the rotation's going to be screwed up.
Okay. What are these assets that you've been working on?
They're just visual...
are they flat? Are they 3D objects?
No,
flat?
they're all 2D.
Oh, okay. They're 2D assets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
are we talking text?
No. So let me explain.
Okay.
So I described in a previous Seraphim update how during the pause menu, I paused the game by reducing the time scale to 0, which causes the game to just stop.
Right.
And then I put a sort of a white, overlay on top of the game, and then you have your menu system.
Right.
Well, that's completely still because all the 3D stuff going on, all the particle systems, everything that would be moving comes to a complete stop. And I'm like, hey, I don't like stillness. Right. Stillness is bad in my philosophy. So I decided to have some motion going on.
Okay.
And that's what this is. And it's mostly just moving patterns and rotating pattern elements and stuff like that behind it, over top of that white overlay, but behind the menu system.
Okay.
So that's really what it is. It's kind of intricate, but not too intricate to where I'm spending too much time on it. But that's what I've done. I've gotten done with that. So I'm bringing it back into the game, putting it in the pause menu. After that, the pause menu is 100%.
Very good.
Yep.
All right, should we jump into our first story?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so late last week, it was announced that Sony's hit video game, Helldivers 2, would require linking a PlayStation Network account to continue playing the game on PC. So new players after May 6th would be required to link their account immediately, and existing players would have until the end of May, specifically May 30th. It's worth noting that Helldivers 2 always had a notice on the Steam page stating that a PSN account was required to play the game, but the requirement was disabled at launch when the game was suffering from like really severe server stability and connection issues due to the overwhelming amount of players that were trying to play the game, because word of mouth was just spreading like wildfire.
Right.
That the game was like, oh my god, it's so much fun, it's incredible.
There was a lot of like social media buzz.
Yeah.
And, YouTube videos and stuff going up.
And just to kind of paint a picture of how successful it was, Matt Piscatella of Circana Group noted that thanks to the day one PC release of Helldivers 2, it is now the 7th highest grossing PlayStation published game in US history. Mm-hmm. And without the PC release of the game, it wouldn't even crack PlayStation's top 20 published games in terms of like gross income. Right. So that's pretty crazy. That means the split has to be like 70% PC players, at least.
Right.
So there's a lot of people playing Helldivers on PC.
Right. It is a game that would work pretty well on PC.
It does seem fitted for PC, like the PC crowd in particular too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So now that Helldivers 2, it's been out for a few months, it's stable. Sony has decided that okay, it's time to reactivate this PSN requirement, so we can get those emails and get those account membership numbers up. So when we have our next quarterly meeting, we can say we got 10 million new, PlayStation Network members or whatever. Because you don't have to be subscribed to PlayStation Plus to play on PC.
Right.
Yeah. Unlike, it's kind of those backwards things.
You don't really have to have a PlayStation either. You can just use a website. Right?
Yeah, no, just to create an account.
Right.
Yeah. Now, when I first heard that they were requiring an account, it didn't really catch me by surprise. I was like, well, it's a PlayStation game.
Yeah. Right.
They're going to want you to have a PlayStation account because there's going to release more PlayStation games. Mm-hmm. And apparently they're planning on offering trophy support on PC pretty soon.
Well, that's a good reason to require it, I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't see the big problem there.
But PC gamers were not happy about this.
Yeah, this is not a surprise.
They're an ornery bunch, and collectively they decided that they weren't going to take this sitting down in their computer chairs.
Yeah. Instead,
they would proceed to review bomb the game and ask for refunds on Steam, many of which Steam granted these refunds.
Yeah, that's...
Steam has a rule where, if you've played more than 2 hours, you don't get a refund.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently Steam was, Gabe Newell was just as upset at this, so he was like, I'm going to grant all these people their refunds.
Yeah.
Because then I don't know if Sony gets dinged for those refunds or if Steam just eats the cost. I'm not totally sure how that works.
Yeah,
when it's past their policy deadline.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how that works.
And to make matters worse, there's 177 countries where it's not possible to make a PSN account, and Helldivers was suddenly delisted for purchase on Steam in every single one of those countries. Mm-hmm. That wasn't even part of the original announcement. So now people who are playing in these regions, not only is their game delisted now, they can't create a PSN account because it's not supported in their country.
Right.
So they're effectively, their purchase is going to be negated.
Yeah.
And they can't even play the game that they enjoy and like ever again.
Right.
They're not, even if they wanted to make a PSN account.
Yeah.
Sure, they could just make an account and say they live in a different country, right?
Yeah. There are ways around it. But...
That's technically against Sony's own terms of service.
Yeah.
So, in order to play a Sony game, you would have to violate Sony's terms of service.
Yeah.
So that just doesn't make sense. So the surprise delisting only served to further embolden the PC player base to continue their review bombing efforts. And finally, last night at 8 o'clock Pacific time or something like that, their efforts were not in vain. PlayStation announced on their Twitter that they would be dropping the requirement to link a PSN account to play the game. They said, Helldivers fans, we've heard your feedback on the Helldivers 2 account linking update. The May 6th update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking for new players, and for current players beginning May 30th, will not be moving forward. We're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Thanks again for your continued support of Helldivers 2, and we'll keep you updated on future plans.
Yeah. All right. So, this is, for me, when it comes to PC gamers and their weird, whatever this is, it's reminiscent to me of like when Epic released their Epic Game Store.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it a big deal? No. You just buy your game from a different store. Like, you're still playing on the same platform. You're not being required to move to a different system. You're just buying from a different web page.
For whatever reason, it's like different like web stores are like different consoles to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're I don't know, they're on Team whatever.
Yeah.
And
Team Steam.
Yeah. And they can't be asked to go somewhere else for their games.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It is a weird thing. I'm not trying to attack anyone here, but like that's I don't know. That's weird and immature to me.
I do think it's strange, and I think it really sucks for the developers who had nothing to do with this decision.
Right.
This is just Sony forcing them to incorporate this update.
That's who you're hurting.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
But, I mean, Sony got the message.
They did.
So I guess it worked.
Well, yeah.
But will all those people, like, there were over 200,000 reviews that were all, like, extremely negative.
Yeah.
Even though they love the game.
That's how they operate, and that's kind of scummy too, in my opinion. It's dishonest.
Because, like, are all of them going to go back and undo their negative review?
No, probably not. No way. All of them? No way.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
That's sad for the developer, because now they're big, probably the biggest game they've ever made.
Yeah. By far.
By far.
Sony's biggest hit in years.
Right. Now it has all this junk on, you know, the review like section.
Yep.
And that's sad. Like, why? They don't deserve that.
No.
And it again, I don't think it's a lot for. I mean, Sony is opening up to you.
Like they're finally giving you their games.
Yeah, they're finally like opening a path and trying to a path that, you know, more games are, you know, hopefully gonna traverse.
Right.
And they just want you to have a PSN account. I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't.
You know, I agree. I think it's a little crazy to like lose your mind.
It'd be different if like it was $5 a month or something.
Like if they made you subscribe to PlayStation Plus.
Right.
Like that would be ridiculous.
That would be ridiculous.
Yeah. But just to make an account, I mean, I guess in Sony's mind, they're thinking, oh, we're going to get all these emails that we can start sending emails to.
Yeah,
now,
of course.
You know?
They're a business.
Right.
And that's what a business
I feel like a lot of PC people are very privacy-oriented types. Well, not all the time.
Then why are they on PC?
Well, because they have their VPNs up, you know.
That's true, yeah.
They have all this stuff going on to protect their privacy and whatnot. And they don't want more companies, you know, emailing them marketing stuff. I mean, you could just immediately unsubscribe as soon as that first email comes in.
I don't see that part of the PC gamers, I guess. Maybe you do. But yeah, you're right. You can just unsubscribe to the emails.
Yeah.
You don't have to receive the Sony newsletter to have a PSN account.
Right.
Like
so how do you think Sony could have maybe handled this better?
I don't think putting their foot down and, you know, sticking it to them is the best look either. So I don't think they should have gone that route. They probably did the only thing they really could do.
And just back away.
Yeah.
I do wonder if this hurts their like plans for.
Of course it does.
Like
they must have had plans.
Right. I mean, I imagine it'll be an optional thing you can do rather than a mandatory thing.
I mean, that would be the best. I mean, yeah, that would be the best option.
So, I mean, like, maybe you find a way to incentivize creating and linking your PlayStation
Right.
account.
Well, if they're going to include PlayStation trophies in their PC games,
right.
that would be an incentive.
Yeah.
Like,
so like, but maybe an in-game incentive, like, I don't know, throw in, hey, register, link your account, and you get this cool PlayStation blue armor set.
I feel like the PC crowd's going to criticize them for doing that. Too.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like, you were telling me I can't get this helmet?
Right.
Unless I subscribe?
To a free account.
Yeah.
On the web. I just... Yeah.
That would be sad if that ignites like another if they end up doing something like that.
And then, the PC crowd will blow it up into a whole controversy, and it'll be in the news cycle that, Sony is baiting them with digital goods.
Helldivers, you can do friendly fire.
Yeah.
And so I bet you, like, players that see someone wearing, like, this is all hypothetical, by the way.
Yeah. They're going to get targeted.
Yeah, they just, like, kill everyone wearing the PlayStation helmet, you know, or whatever. So, yeah, maybe that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Because then people will get griefed for, like, being a traitor.
Right. You're not with our cause.
Yeah. And it's funny because the whole game... It has this tongue-in-cheek, like, spreading democracy across the galaxy thing,
I don't know. That's the pettiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't see that kind of pettiness on console. I see a lot.
Yeah, there's pettiness out there.
There is.
There's like the console warriors still,
But that is... I mean, the console war stuff, while I don't agree with it, it does, like... I don't respect. I don't.
It's part of the legacy.
But I do get it. Like, I do get how it would come about. Mm-hmm. This I really kind of don't. Yeah. This is just silly. Mm. I don't know.
So one thing I want to mention before we move on is that the game was delisted in those 177 countries, right?
Yeah.
It's still yet to be relisted in those countries. So supposedly... According to the CEO of the company Arrowhead that makes Helldivers, PlayStation is working on getting those relisted, but it wouldn't shock me if like a country gets excluded or something like that, like Sony's like, oh well, we can't do business in that country, so we're not gonna.
Yeah, that really stinks for those people.
But what are some of those countries?
Well,
we've got 177 of them.
I mean, they're kind of, it doesn't really matter who they are. It's people live there and people have to deal with this. But they include Kazakhstan, Tunisia, and Vietnam.
Yeah. So I mean, you wouldn't think
they're not. They're not no-name countries.
Yeah, like Vietnam, guys. Right. Like, how do you not have? How is there not a Sony account?
Right.
In Vietnam.
Right. The Vietnamese government would have to probably. I mean, certain countries have laws with software, and
you got to have an office here.
Right. Well, there's that, but I mean, like, console holders or providers, software providers, can't require this, and they can't track location data, stuff like that. Different countries have different laws about software providing and stuff, but I'm gonna guess that these countries just don't allow software providers to require any sort of account or something like that.
Yeah.
That's guesswork on my part.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. How Microsoft has like kind of solved this, I think, is that there are no regional accounts. Mm-hmm. Like for a Microsoft account, you can change the country that you live in on a Microsoft account. And then it just like updates the store that you have access to. Yeah. Whereas with PlayStation, once you create an account and you select like United States, you're locked for life.
That goes into like region coding and stuff like that, which is an outdated concept in gaming. And I think Sony would benefit greatly to doing what Microsoft's doing, just converting over to that model. They would eliminate a massive, massive global headache for themselves with having to deal with different legislations in different countries and doing all this kind of stuff. Like, just do what Microsoft's doing.
Right.
Some things Sony does better and some things Microsoft does better.
Yeah, PlayStation Network has always been a little weird and janky and like real particular about things.
Yeah.
And to see like any improvements on PlayStation Network, I mean, it's basically the same service that launched on PS3.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Like, there have been no improvements to it.
The security definitely feels that way, the cybersecurity end of it.
Well, I mean, that's gotten better.
Yeah, but I mean...
now you can do, like, authentication.
They've still gotten more hacks than Microsoft by far.
Yeah. Well, you know, Microsoft's a computer company, and Sony is...
it makes sense that Microsoft would have more cybersecurity resources than Sony. But, I mean, is that an excuse?
No. No, it's not a good one, at least.
No.
Okay, next story?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so... A little while ago, we talked about Take-Two, the mega games publisher known for publishing games like Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, and the various 2K Sports games, was going to be doing some layoffs, and they said, I think, 5% of their workforce. And we didn't really know where these layoffs were going to hit until just last week.
Right.
So,
in my head, I get Embracer and Take-Two confused. So I'm thinking Embracer and their studios. And,
So no, Middle Earth coffee stains and all that stuff. That's all
Embracer.
That's Embracer.
Yeah.
This is 2K. So they're winding down operations at their subsidiary publisher of smaller, mid-sized games. Private Division is what it's called.
Right.
So they had previously announced in April that layoffs would be occurring across their studios, and Private Division seems to be the one taking the brunt of it. Private Division has offices in Seattle, Las Vegas, New York, and Munich, but no more. All those offices are closing.
Yeah.
The two studios that are being closed are Roll7, who are the developers of the acclaimed Ollie Ollie skateboarding series, and the recently released Roller Drome, which is like this crazy, like arcade style rollerblading game with this really cool visual aesthetic. And Intercept Games, the developers of Kerbal Space Program 2, which was announced at Jeff Keighley's Gamescom live show in 2019 and is currently available in an early access form, is also being shut down. So what the heck do you do when your early access, when the studio making a game, an early access game, just goes away? Like, do they just release whatever the final build was and just let that one go?
Well, that's what Flaming Fowl did.
I mean, they put out a demo.
They did put out a demo, but that's what they had.
Yeah.
You know. Real quick, though, I'm trying to, like, build this up in my head a little bit. So, just to understand, we have Take-Two, the parent company. They own a subsidiary publisher.
Yes.
Who then owns, called Private Division.
Yes.
Who then owns studios underneath them.
Sometimes they just publish games. Sometimes they own studios. In this case, Roll7 and Intercept Games are owned by Private Division, and Private Division is owned by Take-Two.
Right. Okay, got it. All right.
So Take-Two, trying to save money.
So they're shutting down their smaller subsidiary publisher completely.
Apparently, not completely.
Okay.
But majorly.
Right.
They still have a couple games in development under the Private Division banner. Private Division just launched a new early access game last month from Moon Studios, the creator of the Ori games. From people kind of associate them with Xbox. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and there was another one.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, they're like these Metroidvania where you're like this little ferret-looking thing.
That sounds cool.
They're gorgeous. They're some of the like most beautiful games I've ever seen. So within Private Division, the two studios that they're specifically closing are Roll7 and Intercept Games. But there's also a Hobbit game that's in development.
By who?
Weta Workshop. Some of the people who worked on like the Peter Jackson movies. They're making this like cozy Hobbit like farming like town simulator kind of game.
Is that under?
That's under Private Division.
Okay, got it.
Being published by them and is apparently not affected by what's going on.
Okay.
So Private Division, I don't know if they're just going to be a name now, you know?
We talked, I think, the last episode about, didn't someone own the gaming rights for Lord of the Rings?
So yeah, Embracer owns the Lord of the Rings branding.
But this studio's doing a Hobbit game?
But Weta Workshop is doing a Hobbit game, so it's very confusing. So like basically they had to like license like Lord of the Rings from Embracer, but the game is being published by
Take-Two.
Effectively
their
Take-Two.
Competitor.
Yeah.
Crazy. What?
Yeah, well, like I said, remember, Embracer was trying to make money wherever it could.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So,
yeah,
they have the IP, they're going to loan it out.
Right.
Otherwise, what's the point of buying the IP?
Right. Well, to make games.
I guess, yeah. But they seemingly can't make a game. So Take-Two has declined to elaborate further on any of these developments over the last week.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they just kind of told people, well, refer to our comments from, a month ago, basically.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like Take-Two, rather than harming Rockstar and other parts of their bigger studios, they're just going after these like mid-sized games and publishers.
Yeah.
Rather than, so it's like we're just seeing the shrinkification of
like mid-sized games.
Yeah, like there's just going to be less and less of them.
Yeah, so we're probably going to end up referring to last episode a lot, I feel like.
Right, because flaming foul, right? What did the CEO say?
Yeah, so, he said that they couldn't find a publisher.
Right.
And he spent, I forgot how many months.
It's like 9 months.
9 months.
With like more than 30 different publishers.
Without funding.
Yeah.
Trying to find a publisher.
Yeah.
Went through 30 different publishers. Went back to old publishers that previously showed interest. And we're going to get into more previous episode stuff later down the road. But it's all surrounding this exodus of mid-sized games.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm still confused about a little bit. I understand it. You and I talked about live service really kind of being the root cause of
I think it could be, yeah.
Yeah. And so
because players just don't have time for mid-sized games anymore.
Right.
They're too busy with live service games.
Exactly. And the only other games that can survive in this environment are small indie games.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, continue.
No, that was pretty much
the whole story.
My thoughts on the story. I don't. You kind of put it quite succinctly there.
Yeah.
It's just mid-sized games going the way of the dodo.
Mm-hmm. It declined to elaborate further on the layoffs beyond their original statement. So they're not. So Take-Two isn't really revealing information beyond
why. Like they're not saying like, oh, a lot of times, they announce there's going to be layoffs, and then layoffs happen, and then they get asked to comment, and then a lot of times the company will be like, we thank them for their years of dedication and hard work.
Yeah, right. They give their cookie cutter.
The market conditions demand that we make this hard, difficult decision.
The layoff.
Take-Two is just like
the layoff announcement template.
Yeah,
is what I call it.
But Take-Two is just like, no, look at our comments from last month. We don't have anything else to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Sad, and I mean, a lot of our stories probably going on in the future are going to probably involve the exodus of mid-sized games. All right, so we're going to talk about our shirts next, what we're wearing, and
what we're not wearing.
What we're not wearing. I'll go ahead and talk about Taylor's.
All right, I'm going to stand up so you can get a better look at this.
Take a look at that. Let's see. I cannot read any of the text on it.
Okay, it says San Diego.
Okay. Oh, Street Fighter 6 event?
Kinda. Let me back up so I'm not so close to the mic.
Okay.
Well, why don't you just describe the shirt first?
So it has Cammy from Street Fighter with her legs up toward the sky in sort of a sitting position.
I think she's doing like one of her attacks where she like kind of does like a...
Oh, like a slam or something.
Yeah, like with her butt effectively.
Right. Okay, cool. It's cool artwork.
Yeah.
It's got Cammy in the foreground. In the background, there's like a blue ribbon around the Street Fighter. The Street Fighter text is more like the sort of like street tagging.
It's got like
font.
a graffiti kind of thing going on with
font. And then it has just some scenery in the background, and the whole thing is sort of creating this chevron-shaped motif. I like it a lot. And then we have a spray-painted black 6 that's all like sort of dicey and got like a cool font to it, pattern.
On the sleeve.
On the sleeve.
Yeah. And then I don't think there's anything on the back. Right?
No.
Okay, so a little background on this shirt.
Yeah.
There is a company that works a lot with Capcom called Udon.
Okay.
They do like art books, guides, comics, apparel, merchandise, and for the last 2 years, this is the 2023 shirt for Street Fighter 6.
Okay.
They have been getting like one of the most famous Street Fighter artists to make this custom artwork for these shirts that they only sell at San Diego Comic-Con.
Cool.
That's why it says San Diego up
Right.
here at the top. And I can't remember the artist's full name, but I think their last name is Chisato. I believe it's a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the previous one from 2022 was of Chun-Li.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have to wear that another one of these days.
Cool.
But yeah, I try to get it and every year, but they keep upping the price. I think this one was like $35 or something like that.
I'd seen now that there is the year down below. It's got the graffiti font.
Yeah, it does.
I couldn't really like tell that.
And you see it's got like there's like a brick wall behind it, so the whole thing is like a graffiti on a brick wall effectively.
Right. Got it.
So Street Fighter 6 has a very like urban kind of like vibe going to it.
Gotcha.
So I think it's sort of tying it into that.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a cool shirt.
Thank you. If they have a new one this year, I can pick one up for you.
I might want one of those. All right, should I stand up? Or?
No, I got it here. So Rick is wearing another piece from the Danganronpa Hot Topic collection.
Yep.
And this is like the main character art for... please say his name for me.
Okay, it's Yosuhiro Hagakure.
Hagakure, yeah. So he's sort of he's from the first game, the first Danganronpa.
Yes.
Should I spoiler alert anything here? Or no.
Yeah, go ahead and...
he's one of the survivors of the game.
He also does appear in Danganronpa 3 in the anime.
Yes, he does.
And he's mentioned in Ultra Despair Girls.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, because he has like a family member that's in that game, right?
His mother's in the game.
That's right.
So that game actually, after you beat it, unlocks a short story called Danganronpa Hagakure, which the game's quick to let you know is not canon, quote unquote. I don't see the problem because nothing in this story conflicts.
I think maybe they said that because they wanted the ability to retcon themselves.
I have a theory why.
Okay.
Like in retrospect.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil the story.
Okay, well maybe tell me off
really
mic.
Good. Yeah, I'll tell you off mic. But yeah, he is a character that I hated.
Playing the game,
and then he did kind of grow on me.
I agree. Yeah. Because he's just like useless, like constantly.
He contributes nothing and gets to survive, while other characters you love get killed. Yeah.
And I can't quite remember. Is his fortune telling stuff all phony, right?
Yeah. So he boasts that he's right about I don't know what percent of some low percentage of his predictions.
Yeah.
Like that's impressive.
Yeah.
And he's a joke character.
It's almost like, how did he end up there?
Well, he's a high school student.
Right, but it's like all of the people at this high school are known for being like the best at whatever they are, right?
Yeah. So he's supposed to be like the ultimate fortune teller.
Right. Even though he's not even
close.
Guess
the implication is that he just gets lucky with like the luckiest with his like predictions.
But he's not actually like clairvoyant or anything.
He thinks he is. But,
okay.
Yeah. Do you want to describe the shirt anymore?
It's black. It's like a smoky gray, I guess you could say. And okay, so the key character art for this character, he's got crazy hair. I don't know if you want to call them dreads of some kind.
I don't know, yeah.
But it is spread out like like a creature from Alien or something, with like all these like legs coming out from the sides of it. Like the width of his hair has to be like 5 feet at least from one end to the next.
Like the breadth, the wingspan. The
wingspan of the hair. He's got a orb in his hand, a fortune-telling orb.
It's like a crystal ball.
Yeah, and then it looks like he has some what do you call those cards? Tarot cards.
Oh, these are down here, tarot cards, and then this is like a talisman.
Yeah, to like ward off evil spirits or something.
And then some incense or something.
Yeah, I do like how he wears his jacket. Because he just like lets it sit on his shoulders. He doesn't actually like have his arms in coat. It. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can see his feet. So if you're into feet,
Right.
So okay, moving on from the shirts.
Moving on. So our next story involves Square Enix, but before we get into it, Taylor and I are going to tell you a personal story
about Square Enix.
Related to Square Enix. And it's something that happened to us back in 2015 when we were at the PlayStation Experience for that year. It was at San Diego?
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah, at the Moscone Center.
That's right.
Yeah, the only year they ever held it in San Francisco.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. So, do you wanna go ahead?
Sure. So, I mean, long story short, we were walking by the Square Enix booth, and they had like screens on the side of their booth.
I believe we were in line for a neighboring booth.
Okay. I mean, from this little screen grab, I feel like we're just on the carpet.
Oh, I remember we were, so on this side was a wall of some sort. I remember that much.
I don't remember that detail.
Okay, I'm pretty sure we were in line.
Okay, all right. Maybe we were in line for something. But what matters is that we could see Square Enix's booth very clearly. And on one of the TVs, instead of displaying something related to Square Enix...
Well, it was Hitman that was supposed to be on that screen.
Well, we'll get to how we know that. Instead, it was playing a Playboy Channel naked yoga video where like a woman was totally naked and she was doing yoga poses.
Yeah.
And I mean 100% naked.
Yeah, she's naked.
And it's like I don't know that more than a dozen or so people saw this because it was on screen for couldn't have been more than
like 10-12 seconds.
Well, think about this. I had to pull my phone out, so I had to have seen it before I pulled my phone out and got the camera rolling.
It was a few seconds.
So maybe upwards of 30 seconds, I'd say.
Yeah.
So this is playing on the side of the booth of the Square Enix, or on the TV in the Square Enix booth, and then all of a sudden, whoever is at the computer inside the booth that you can't see realizes that, oh crap, this is playing, and he quickly minimizes it, and he minimizes the video, and then it opens up to like some porn page, and you see all these like really crazy ads that are like
thumbnails of other videos or something.
Yeah, and like animated ads that are like more graphic than just a woman doing yoga, you know?
Right.
And then it gets minimized all the way, and then all of a sudden this like Hitman slide from like Excel comes up on the screen, and he's like trying to maximize it like real quick.
PowerPoint or something.
Yeah. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to play the audio of the video that I recorded. If this doesn't work out well, I'll cut it and I'll just add the audio.
We'll make it work.
Yeah. But I'm just going to play for you my live reaction to recording the video. I won't ever share this video on YouTube because I can't, because there's nudity. And, the video would get taken down. But Square Enix, if I ever need to blackmail you,
right.
I got it.
Right.
Give me tickets to everything that
we got the dirt on Square Enix.
Some guy who probably doesn't even work there anymore. Right. We're talking about 9 years ago now.
Right.
Okay, here's the audio. All right, live at the PlayStation Experience, the Playboy Channel, everybody.
Thank you, Square Enix.
Courtesy of Square Enix. Oh, shit! Oh, man! jerking off in the booth. Whoa! All right, so that was my recording. When you hear me go, whoa,
yeah,
that's when the video gets minimized.
Yeah, and we see the website that he's on.
Yeah, with all its like grotesque ads and things.
He's watching something that's like really softcore, but then he pulls that down and we see a bunch of hardcore stuff.
Yeah, it was... I do wonder if anyone from Square Enix caught wind of that.
Yeah.
Like, did anyone go up to the booth to say anything? Because I don't remember seeing any, like, employees standing there watching it unfold.
Right.
So, like, for all we know, this guy got away, like, scot-free.
Yeah, we don't know. I'm gonna just go ahead and assume that someone from the actual event, like, not Square Enix, but
maybe someone else.
Right. Like, someone from the actual PlayStation experience.
Right.
Or the venue hosting might have saw it. I mean, they have security cameras and stuff, and probably informed the director of the exhibit.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that happened. But yeah, so just an interesting gaming story from our past, going to events and stuff like that.
I've never once seen that again.
Nope.
And probably won't ever see it again.
It was a once in a lifetime. But can you imagine?
Yeah. This dude was sitting in the booth, like mid-convention,
right,
and thought, "Hey, let me get one of these going real quick."
He can't wait till his break to go to the bathroom and relieve himself,
or even better, go to your hotel room,
right?
Like, do you have to do it mid-work day?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that is crazy to think about.
That's nuts. There's a lot of people around.
Yeah. I'm just in this box with all these screens. I'm gonna do it on the computer, not on my phone.
On my work computer.
On the computer that's playing a video on the screen outside. It boggles the mind.
Didn't unplug the cable.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a goof.
That is a goof. So talking about Square Enix and possibly talking about goofs.
Yeah.
We have some news from Square Enix coming in. They are abandoning multiple game projects. They're in the process. I'll talk about it more, but we heard from the CEO a few episodes ago about his intentions and his sort of game plan or road. What do you call it?
Sort of a roadmap of what they need to do to right the ship.
And it didn't make all the sense to me in the world at the time, but now it's making more sense. I feel like
we've got some clarity.
Right. So Square Enix announced to its shareholders that they're expecting to recognize the extraordinary loss of approximately $140 million as it abandons a number of in-development projects. You might remember earlier this year, like I just mentioned, we spoke about Takashi Kiryu, who's the president of Square Enix. He would have Square Enix be more selective and focused in the usage of development resources. Since then, the company has completed a close examination of their development pipeline, undertaken or in keeping with the revised approach.
Yes, that's a quote.
That's in quotes. So I'm going to reread that because I botched it. Quote, a close examination of the group's development pipeline undertaken in keeping with the revised approach. End quote. That's his intention. These losses are a result of that examination. The company has yet to make any changes to their fiscal year forecast, but they are still examining whether they need to do so or not.
So, I mean, what is that? That says that, like, they think they might be able to make that up somehow, I guess.
Right. Well, I mean, we know Square Enix has their foot in multiple things, or their hand.
I mean, they did launch a huge Final Fantasy VII Rebirth game earlier this year.
Right.
Probably sold pretty well. Although, if I can kind of slightly distract us and talk about that for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Apparently, according to analysts, they've said Rebirth has sold half as many copies as Final Fantasy VII Remake did in the same period of time.
Wow.
Now, there's some caveats there. Final Fantasy VII Remake launched on PS4, which had over 100 million install base.
Yeah.
And at the end of its life cycle, during the right at the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone had to stay home.
Yeah.
Whereas this game is launching not even halfway through PlayStation 5's life cycle.
Right.
Probably.
There are very few people with a PS5 than a PS4.
Mm-hmm. I don't even know if PS5's hit 50 million yet.
Right. Yeah. So against multiple odds, Rebirth has sold as many as Remake did.
No, Rebirth has sold half as much.
Oh, half as much.
As Remake did in the same amount of time.
Got it.
Due to like a smaller install base, probably. Maybe less interest from people. I'm not totally sure.
Mm-hmm.
We both have a copy.
Yeah, we do.
So.
Yeah. There has been zero comment on what games may have been affected by these cancellations. Some games from NVIDIA, the NVIDIA leak, that have yet to materialize include both Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy Tactics Remake. That's speculation.
It is.
Kind of on our part. Both of those, to me, would absolutely count as mid-sized games.
Yeah. I mean, other Square Enix games from the NVIDIA leak have since released since that initial leak.
Mm-hmm.
So it remains to be seen whether these games are even still in development or whether they were only in like a concept phase.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anything about the Tactics remake in some times, but there has been chatter from insiders that the Final Fantasy IX remake is still happening and still on track.
Mm-hmm.
It's also worth noting that there was a Final Fantasy XIV panel at Penny Arcade Expo earlier this year, the one that takes place in Boston.
Yeah.
And I guess if you like pre-order the new expansion for Final Fantasy XIV,
yeah,
there's like some bonus cosmetics that have to do with Final Fantasy IX.
Okay.
And I guess the director of the game was like, I can't comment on why those cosmetics are there.
Yeah.
You know, like tongue-in-cheek, slyly.
Right. Obviously, the game.
Yeah.
So, are we thinking 9's affected or not so much?
9's probably not affected. I think out of these two, if one of these rumored leaked games is affected, it
Don't
could
say
be
Tactics.
It could be the Tactics remake. And you know what sucks is that like a lot of times these remakes are used to judge whether they should make a new game in the series.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
And Tactics hasn't had a new game in a long time.
Oh shoot, the last one was War of the Lions, which was a remake of the first one.
Right. So we're now getting possibly another remake of maybe the War of the Lions or the original.
Yeah.
But so there's only been 2 original Final Fantasy Tactics games,
Wrong.
right?
That's incorrect. There's Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Final
A2.
Fantasy Tactics A2 Grimoire of the Rift.
That's right. There's 3. Okay.
Yeah, and which A2 is a direct sequel to Tactics Advance.
Okay. It is.
The A2 is supposed to be Advanced too. Yeah.
Okay, but that came out for like PS1.
It was
right?
DS. Original DS. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have it.
I'm
it.
glad.
I have over 400 hours
Whoa.
on that DS game. Yeah. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I went nuts.
That might be... Is that your most played game
Possibly.
ever? Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. That just tells you how much I want this remake to come out.
Right.
Square Enix has had a number of smaller, mid-sized games released over the last 3 years to middling excitement from fans and critics alike. Harvestella, Valkyrie Elysium, which I think is part of the Valkyrie Profile franchise.
It's like the first new game in that series in a long time.
Right. Also a tactical RPG.
But this new game is an action game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. The Diofeld Chronicles?
I think Diofield.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. Diofield Chronicles, which I never heard of.
You might be interested. It's a real-time tactical game.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Like RTS?
RTS, but like console-friendly, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. And Star Ocean 6, the Divine Force. Well, it's just Star Ocean, the Divine Force.
Yeah, the 6 is implied.
Right. That's just to name a few. There are others.
Yeah.
While some of these games have found an audience it is unlikely any of them filled up the coffers in a significant way for Square Enix.
Yeah, a lot of these games were bargain bin titles, you know, within a year of their launch.
Sure.
I mean,
that happens with games save Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, Harvestella didn't end up super cheap super quickly. Valkyrie Elysium and Star Ocean 6 like got dirt cheap really fast.
Yeah.
Another game, they did do a remake of the Tactics Ogre game. Let Us Cling Together.
Okay.
And that has held its value pretty well. So that kind of gives me hope for the Final Fantasy Tactics remake.
Those were all Atlas games. Like, what's Square Enix doing?
Right. Well, so like a lot of times, especially back in that time, Atlas couldn't, or Square Enix couldn't necessarily localize that many games at once. So they would have like,
got it.
I mean, think about on the Wii, you had Xseed localizing The Last Story from Nintendo.
That's true, yeah.
And then other companies also localized Nintendo's games in some cases.
That makes sense. Needless to say, it's a dark day for Square Enix fans when confirmation of multiple in-development projects have been canceled. What could have been will never be.
Yeah. Just like now there's this like, what were those games?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so we're always going to be wondering what the Square Enix titles that were canceled were.
Right.
I know of one that, oh man, I wish I had more info on this on hand, but it was two big, like really big game designers, directors that came together and made like this pet project, and it was something Wonderworld. Something in Wonderworld.
Oh, Balan Wonderworld.
That's it.
That wasn't canceled though.
It came out, but it was a mid-sized game,
and
it bombed
hard. It was created in part by Yuji Naka, one of Sonic's creators.
He's one of the two that I was talking about. You're right.
Yeah.
And so that game was, I thought the concept was neat.
Yeah.
But the execution just had too many problems.
Yeah.
And but that I can see that being like maybe not a staple example so much. I
think it's a great example of a recent Square Enix flop.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's during the pandemic when this came out.
Right.
And it was really not well received. And Square Enix put like a fair bit of marketing behind it too. I remember when they announced it, they had this like really fancy website to show it off. And then like I think there maybe was a demo. And people were like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
What's going on here, you know? Because it's a game that you literally play, I think, with 1 or 2 buttons only. It's like a jump and like a...
You collect different hats throughout the game, and there's like 300 different hats in the game, and they each have a different ability. Some of them are useless. Like, they're designed to be useless, I feel like. And that's okay. They're like, the Castlevania games have all the different food items that you can collect that do have different health effects and stuff like that.
Right.
Some of them you would never want to use.
Yeah.
You know, they're just there to fill your inventory.
Want to know something really crazy about Yuji Naka as a result? So, like, Balan Wonderworld came out, and, like, he was, like, immediately fired from Square Enix. And then there was, like, a huge lawsuit against him because while he was at Square Enix, he had apparently overheard that this external company was working with Square Enix on this Final Fantasy VII like battle royale mobile game, and he apparently invested a bunch of money into this company after hearing about it.
Yeah.
And so basically he got caught for like insider trading.
Oh wow.
And he had to go. He served time.
Wow.
Yeah. And Yuji Naka just like recently got out, and it's crazy. He is the most petty person in the world. He is constantly attacking people on Twitter, like former like co-workers at like Sega when like they were making Sonic. Like he has posted pictures of like team members, like, oh, here's an old photo of us in the 90s working on Sonic 1, and then there's like some people's faces are like smudged out. Like with like a digital tool.
Dude.
Yeah,
what?
He's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is he the guy that drew Sonic, like the Needle Mouse guy with the napkin?
I can't remember.
Okay.
There are a few people who sort of claim to be the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog, and in reality, it was a shared thing.
Yeah, right.
You know, but yeah, it's not as easy as I did it. Right. You know, it was a whole project now. But yeah, there are a few people who have more of a hand in it than others do.
Right.
But yeah, Yuji Naka was definitely there, but it's just weird how openly petty he is about everything.
That's crazy.
It blows my mind that he was caught doing insider trading.
So he went to prison for that.
I think he got out like really early and had like a suspended sentence or something because you know it's a white collar crime.
Right.
But still.
Yeah, crazy. Didn't know that. But my point is just that Balan Wonderworld is the definition to me of a mid-size game.
Yeah.
Like it is 100% mid-size game.
Yeah.
Like, and you had two legendary names. I can't remember the other person. But, you know, I can see why Square Enix would put a lot of faith in it. I can see why fans would put a lot of faith in it. Just because of the two main talents behind that game. And its failure would be an upset both for Square Enix financially and probably cause them to look, you know, that was probably a moment for them where they really looked at, you know, this is how things used to be, but is this working?
Yeah. I mean, the game clearly needed more time.
Yeah.
In the oven. It wasn't ready.
Right, it wasn't.
And I think that was maybe Square Enix maybe doesn't want to get in that position again. They don't have the ability to just push a game back a year because it's not ready.
Right.
You know, like if they set a target date and like they start manufacturing discs and stuff, whether the game is ready or not, you know, like they're going to ship it.
Right.
Like, so it's like, good luck, you know.
Yeah.
Cause, you know, maybe if it was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Remake or whatever, they would, you know, give it all the time in the world it needs to cook.
Right.
You know, but when it comes to titles that are smaller, they're like, well, you know, we can't push back your game release another 6 months, you know, just because you want us to.
Right.
You know, so good luck. Ship it.
Yeah. And so many publishers are like that too. But I did mention that the previous story that we talked about where Takashi Kiryu came out and made his like announcement of his roadmap plan for Square Enix, how he was divesting money in this and they were going to cut out the mid-size games, focus on small games, and focus on really big games. And to me, at that time, you probably remember, I was kind of like, what? Why? You know,
some of my favorite Square Enix games are mid-sized games.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. Like, they're known for those.
Yeah.
And they're really big games. They're only recent, you know. But I was just kind of bewildered at the time because I didn't understand the logic. Right. I just didn't see why they would go in this direction.
So, like, what do we only get Final Fantasy, only get Kingdom Hearts, only get Dragon Quest?
Right.
Like, nothing else, nothing innovative, nothing new?
Yeah, right.
It's just, you don't want to be risky at all anymore?
Right. That and small stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But now I see it. Now I understand. And with the Flaming Fowl story last week and the sort of realization on my part that publishers are staying away, like they're avoiding these kinds of projects, these size projects, I can see why he thought the way he did. He was ahead of the curve on that, and he's seeing just the exodus before we saw it, or before I really recognized it for what it is, at least.
But is that even Square Enix anymore? If all they do is...
I understand that. Yeah. I understand that argument completely. And it's... Because anything Final Fantasy Tactics, anything, you know, that's a remake... Well, if they remade... I don't know. If they did a straight remake of Final Fantasy IX... that would qualify as a mid-sized game.
Right.
If they remade it in the way that they're remaking 7, no way.
Not. Yeah, it's, from my understanding, is it's more of a straight classic style remaster plus, you know?
Right. And that is definitely a mid-sized game.
I mean, even Dragon Quest is known for lots of mid-sized spin-off style games.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And we did have one recently with Dragon Quest Monsters 3 for the Switch.
Yeah.
So that's good, and that seemingly has sold pretty well worldwide.
And Dragon Quest is a franchise that really leans heavy into spin-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
more spin-offs than there are mainline games.
Right. and the spin-offs take on their own franchise life kind of thing. Like
even the spin-offs have spin-offs.
Yes.
You got Dragon Quest Monsters series, then you have Dragon Quest Monsters Joker series.
Right. You have Dragon Quest Heroes is another one.
Yeah, there's 2 of those.
Yeah. They have a lot.
Yeah.
So what, this spells bad news for us who love Square Enix. Because all the mid-sized games are, what Square Enix is known for, and what it sounds like we're going to be getting is more Final Fantasy 15 size stuff. 16.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, like, I want those too, but it's like I also want smaller games from them.
How big was 16? Was it huge or?
What did I say my playthrough took me? 60, 70 hours, something like that. That's pretty big. It's pretty big. It's not insignificant, that's for sure. I mean, could I have played through it faster? Definitely.
Okay.
But I did complete like every quest, that kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
Which some might say. I mean, a lot of people argue that game's like one of their biggest flaws is that like the side quests are like mostly not very good, mostly kind of boring, typical JRPG
item finding,
fetch quest, that kind of thing.
Escorts.
But I mean, gameplay wise, it was a total blast.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out if that would be considered a mid-sized game.
Oh no, definitely not.
Okay,
no, they consider that like one of their crown jewels. I think any numbered Final Fantasy game is going to be
right, unless they brought back, because the old ones nowadays would be considered mid-size for sure. Like
in a lot. I mean, pre 3D, pre 10.
Yeah, so
pre 9,
pre 6 or pre 7. So 6 back.
I think even 7 and 8. I mean, I get technically they're 3D games, but like they've got pre-rendered backgrounds and stuff,
Yeah, what they're doing with 7 is not.
Oh no. Yeah.
And if they remade 8, they would almost kind of have to. The expectation would be there for them to do that.
They've kind of talked about like what would you guys remake next, and I feel like the kind of consensus from them is I don't know that we'll ever do anything
like this
quite
again.
Like this again for one of the games.
8 is the kind of game that would demand something like that.
Yeah,
it's as invested in the characters,
right?
And that kind of thing. But so bad news. Hopefully, this kind of keeps Square Enix on top.
I mean, I don't want to see Square Enix go away.
Right.
So if this means Square Enix stays alive, then good. But I do wonder, like, at what cost?
Right.
Their soul, their identity.
I'm still rooting for the new president.
Yeah.
I'm still on his side. He hasn't. He's doing what he has to do.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything evil.
He's got to make hard decisions. I mean, we haven't heard of layoffs at Square Enix.
Right. We haven't heard of layoffs. He has the foresight enough to see this, but before it gets bad.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these mid-sized Square Enix games, my understanding is that they work with external developers on them. They're not necessarily in-house projects.
True, yeah.
They have like a director or producer from Square Enix that kind of works with the external company.
I see a lot of their kind of games where another studio will build like the battle system, or they'll build some internal like system or tool, and just focus on just that.
Like I'm pretty sure like Harvestella and Dio Field Chronicles were not developed directly by Square Enix.
Right.
Like the actual like work of making the game was not done by Square Enix. Right.
Yeah, I get it. But so bad news. Hopefully good for Square Enix's health.
I know that when we have a Square Enix story, like we gotta have it in the episode. We gotta talk about it. We gotta analyze it. And it's really interesting to watch this kind of new Square Enix with this new CEO.
Yeah.
New young CEO. Probably wants to be there for a long time. He's
Yeah.
self-described like Square Enix, like obsessed person, you know?
Right.
So in that sense, he seems like a good person to have there. He's got business acumen to go along with it, which is important.
He's making big swings.
They are big swings.
And, but, I mean, he saw this before I saw it. So, you know.
All the balls are still in the air, though.
Yeah,
we don't know where they're going to land.
Yeah,
are they going to be home runs?
Right.
Are they going to go out of bounds?
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll see.
And we're going to keep an eye on this shift regarding mid-sized games, because I guarantee this is going to come up more and more probably every episode.
I think so.
And transmission.